All right, so it's 7:05. We can get started now. So my name's Jen. I'm the events committee leader for the OUR's New York Long Island team. And thank you all so much for being here for the Human Trafficking Internet Safety for Parents and Teens. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers for today. We have Janet Lombardo, who is the team leader for OUR's New York Long Island volunteer team. And we have Andrea Pinta, who is the assistant team leader. So to go over our agenda today, we're going to be reviewing what is human trafficking. We'll go over internet safety and define grooming and sextortion. We'll provide tips for teens and let parents and guardians know how they can help, how to respond to certain situations, and who or where to report instances to. So before we begin, we're going to ask you to take a couple of questions with a poll. So in a couple of seconds, you'll see a pop-up come up. So our first question is, are you currently a student? And I see in the chat, what does OUR stand for? So it's Operation Underground Rescue. And then our second question is, agree or disagree? I am very knowledgeable about human trafficking and can recognize the signs. I am confident that I know how to act in a situation where someone may be in danger. So please answer if you strongly agree, if you're neutral with that statement, or if you disagree or strongly agree. And there's no right or wrong answers here, it's just how you feel. I see we have a couple of students here, which is great. Again, as a reminder, we will send out a link. We'll put it in the chat, and also it'll be sent via email. And that will be your next step to getting the community service hours if you wish to do that. So leave this poll open for just a couple more seconds, and then everyone can see each other's responses. All right, so I'm going to close the poll now. So mostly people aren't students, but we do have a few, which is great. And then it's mostly agree or neutral with the second statement. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll have a much better feeling and feeling comfortable about knowing the signs and prevention and safety tips. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Janet Lombardo, and she can get started.
Thanks so much, Jen, and thanks everyone. I'm actually going to go off camera for a little bit, just so you can concentrate on the slides that we're showing today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and hopefully our bandwidth is good. So as Jen mentioned, I am the team leader for Operation Underground Railroad, or OUR for short. OUR is a non-for-profit organization that exists to rescue human trafficking victims with a focus on child sex trafficking. But today we're talking about internet safety, right? How to keep ourselves and our children safe while we're online. But we can't talk about internet safety without talking about human trafficking. Human trafficking doesn't happen like most people think it does. It's not a snatch and grab situation, although that does and has happened. It typically happens in families, like an uncle or an aunt or a trusted family member, a friend, a boyfriend, or someone you meet on the internet. It starts in chat rooms, in game rooms, and it starts on some of our favorite apps that we use every single day. So we first need to understand what human trafficking is and why it happens, so we know how to respond, and so that it doesn't happen to our loved ones. So before I start with my portion of the presentation, I just wanted to thank everyone who came, who signed up for the training, and especially our youth. It's going to take all of us to end human trafficking. So I thank you for wanting to learn more. And I hope that after tonight, you feel comfortable talking about this subject so you can share your knowledge with your friends. But I have to warn you that some of the things we are going to share with you may be a little upsetting or shocking, and it may make you feel uncomfortable, but it is necessary to talk about it. Human trafficking is not a subject that anyone really wants to talk about, but we need to keep talking about it. Over 40 million people are trafficked worldwide. 25% of trafficking victims are children. It's a $150 billion industry, the fastest criminal enterprise. It's surpassing drugs and arms or guns, because unlike drugs, you can sell a child over and over again. In fact, every 3 minutes, a child is being trafficked for sex. It's heartbreaking, really. Children are as young as 6 or 7 years old. And the very sad thing is that the US, right here in the United States, we create the demand. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 21.7 million plus reports to the cyber tip line came in 2020. 18,300 attempted abductions were analyzed. 67% involved the suspect driving a vehicle. In 2019, 805 victims were identified in New York to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And we know in 2020 that went up 20%. But those are just the ones that were reported. One unforeseen consequence of the rise of the internet has been an explosion in the illicit trade of child sexual abuse images and videos. It's amazing that over 25 million images are reviewed by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children annually. That's over 480,769 images per week. So, what is human trafficking? According to the Polaris Project, human trafficking is the business of stealing freedom for profit. And in some cases, traffickers trick, defraud, or physically force victims into selling sex. And other victims are lied to, assaulted, threatened, or manipulated into working under inhumane, illegal, or otherwise unacceptable conditions. Human trafficking, as I said, is a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry that denies freedom to over 25 million people around the world. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. Slavery is when someone is forced to do something they do not want or wouldn't do. They can use force, fraud, or coercion to control their victims. Different forms of human trafficking are sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And we're going to talk about that. Trafficking has low risks and very high profits. So let's talk about consent and coercion. Consent is giving permission for something to happen. In order to give consent, clearly communicating yes has to be on the consent giver's own terms. If the individual does not say no, That doesn't mean, nor is it a sign, that they have consented. Minors cannot legally consent to exchanging sex for something of value. That is important to note. Coercion can be perpetrated in various different ways, but in general, coercion equals manipulation. Love 46 is an organization, and it describes coercion through 4 different ways. Pressuring, which is repeatedly asking someone until they're worn down. Threatening, and the perpetrator will say, "I'll break up with you if you don't have sex with me." They can be intimidating by punching the wall when someone says no. And blackmailing. They'll say, "I'll tell everyone what you did if you don't do X, Y, Z." Who are traffickers? Just like those who are trafficked, there is no specific profile for a trafficker. No common country, status, economic demographic, male or female. There may be different trends in gender, social economic status, identity depending on the country, but a sweeping generalization cannot be made about who traffickers are. While pimps can be female, the majority in America are male. Traffickers can be lone individuals or extensive criminal networks. Often the traffickers and their victims share the same nationality, ethnic, or cultural background, allowing the trafficker to better understand and exploit the vulnerabilities of their victims. Traffickers are pimps, gang members, as I said earlier, family members or relatives, a boyfriend, friends, neighbors, adults in a position of authority. Their common thread is a willingness to exploit other human beings for profit. In some cases, a victim of exploitation may not have a trafficker. This is predominantly known as a situation where an individual engages in survival sex. And survival sex is when an individual engages in sexual activity for an extreme need, like food or shelter. The US recognizes 2 forms of human trafficking: human trafficking, sex trafficking or sexual exploitation, and labor trafficking. The most common form of human trafficking is sex trafficking. Basically, sex trafficking is when a person is forced to perform sex acts for profit. And labor trafficking is prevalent in the US, but is more commonly known internationally. There's no single way to confirm that someone is being trafficked. Oftentimes, it may not be trafficking at all. It is often a combination of things. So there's a lot of things you need to look out for. And some of the red flags are here. Behavioral indicators. A child avoids answering questions or lets others speak for him or her. A child appears frightened or resistant or belligerent to law enforcement. A child may lie about his or her age and identity. A child looks to others before answering questions. They may seem coached in talking to law enforcement. And they may use trafficking-related terms like trick or the game. A child is preoccupied with getting money. Then that is often, displaying cash or photos of cash. These are real red flags. But again, it's not just one. Some physical indicators. A child has multiple cell phones and/or electronic devices. A child may have large amounts of cash or a prepaid credit card. They may have no ID, or their ID is being held by another person. Multiple children are present with an unrelated male or female. Child has unusual, unexplained sexual paraphernalia, such as bulk, condoms, or lubrications, etc. There may be evidence that a child has been or will be traveling. And that sometimes you can be aware of that because they seem to be living out of a suitcase or motels. A child has a name or symbol tattooed, burned or branded onto his or her body, particularly when coupled with the child's reluctance to explain the tattoo. The child's tattoo matches other children's tattoos. The child indicates money or ownership. They may have multiple hotel keys or receipts. And the presence of an overly controlling or abusive boyfriend or older female. So who is at risk? Children are the most vulnerable. Those who have an unstable living situation, have a history of domestic violence. They may have a caregiver or family member who has substance abuse issues. They may be runaways or involved in juvenile justice or foster care systems. Undocumented immigrants. A person who's facing poverty or economic need, have a history of sexual abuse, are addicted to drugs or alcohol. But it's important to understand that trafficking really can happen to anyone. And that's where we're going to talk about internet safety next. Online enticement involves an individual communicating with someone believed to be a child via the internet, with the intent to commit a sexual offense or abduction. This is a broad category of online exploitation and includes sextortion, in which a child is being groomed to take sexually explicit images and/or ultimately meet them face-to-face with someone for sexual purposes, or to engage in a sexual conversation online, or in some instances, to sell or trade the child's sexual images. This type of victimization takes place across every platform of social media, messaging apps, and gaming platforms. In April 2020, OUR's aftercare team was contacted by an 11-year-old girl who was exploited on the well-known app TikTok. She was bored and trying to connect with peers in the outside world. She posted videos throughout her whole day, including herself singing in the shower. By the end of the day, men began asking her for sexual pictures. She didn't understand why they were asking her for these things, like this was because she did not connect the idea that an adult man would be paying attention to her videos. When traffickers get pictures or videos of young children, they can sell the images within a day to thousands of people throughout the world without ever leaving their homes. So we are so grateful to local government agencies like Internet Crimes Against Children, or ICAC, that we can refer families to them. So we mentioned grooming. What is grooming? Well, we can't talk about internet safety without talking about grooming. Grooming is the precursor phase. Sexual grooming, or just grooming, is a preparatory process in which a predator gradually gains a person's trust with the intent to exploit them. The victim is usually a child, teen, or vulnerable adult. The purpose of grooming is to manipulate the person into becoming a cooperating participant in their own abuse or exploitation, which reduces the likelihood of a disclosure and increases the likelihood that the victim will become attached and repeatedly return to the perpetrator. Charlie is a young teen who does not have many friends. He is kind of a loner and has a hard time connecting kids his own age and at school. He also has a low self-esteem. He plays video games all day when he is not in school to pass the time. He feels connected when he's in the chat rooms. His parents both work and he is often left alone. They are not very attentive when they are home and have no idea that Charlie is depressed and vulnerable. This is a typical situation that perpetrators take advantage of children over the internet. They know they're vulnerable and they look for these things in their conversations with them. They seek to trust from their victims. They give them validation, and sometimes they will give them gifts, like they'll send them, ask them for their address so they could send them gift cards. The predator's goal is to receive content or exploit the person. Predators also hide their identity, posing as a young child themselves. So there are 6 stages of grooming, and I'm going to go through each one of these. The first is targeting a victim. Traffickers target victims who have some noticeable vulnerabilities, right? Emotional neediness, low self-esteem, or economic stress. Social media and apps with private messaging features make it so easy and faster for traffickers to identify those victims. The second phase is gaining trust and information. Oh, sorry. Gaining trust and information. Gathering information about the victim. This can be done through casual conversations with the victim or with parents or friends. Many victims are first groomed and exploited by a family member, as we mentioned before. Traffickers skilled at grooming often mix well with other adults, gaining a trusted position as an honorary family member, if they aren't already a member of the family. Filling a need is number 3. The information gained allows the trafficker to fill a need in the victim's life, making the victim dependent on them in some way, buying them gifts, being a friend, being a love relationship for them, or buying soft drugs and alcohol. This is why many times a trafficker may look like a boyfriend to an unsuspecting friends and family. Then is isolation. The trafficker creates times to be alone with the victim. The trafficker will also begin to have a major role in the victim's life and attempt to distance the victim from friends and family. In isolation, the trafficker has more control over the messages the victim hears and is better able to manipulate them. And then the abuse begins. The trafficker begins claiming that a service must be repaid, whether money spent on cigarettes or drugs, car rides, mobile phones. It may even begin with requests for illicit images, sexting, that are then used to threaten the victim. So in most cases, the trafficker demands sex as a payment for such services. And then number 6 is maintain control. In many cases, the trafficker maintains control of the victim through threats, violence, fear, or blackmail. Many victims show loyalty to their traffickers even after they've been recovered because of the insidious nature of the manipulation and the trauma bonds that are formed. When we discuss trafficking and exploitation, it's really impossible to define it in one scenario. This diagram and the following examples can hopefully help paint a picture of how varied a situation can be from another. One thing that is almost common denominator is grooming, manipulation, hiding one's identity, and earning trust. Traffickers have a process. They select the most vulnerable. Grooming tactics work most successfully when the victim is between the ages of 11 and 16, when a normal human brain is still developing. According to the National Institute of Health, a teen's brain is highly sensitive to pleasure and reward as the nucleus accumbens is nearly fully developed. But the prefrontal cortex, right, the part of the brain that helps us make major decisions and foresee consequences, is not fully developed in most humans until their mid-20s. Predators are masters at manipulation. First, there's the courtship, gaining trust and filling a need. They introduce themselves slowly. Shows interest in the child, asking questions about their life, their family, and their hopes and dreams. They give them excessive flattery. They buy them gifts. They show a romantic interest, often by someone who's older. So they provide them security. They provide them food and a place to sleep and protection. And then they start the manipulation begins, and isolation. Anyone who would object to the relationship, they isolate you from. All information used for manipulation. They remove the safety nets and create a dependency. According to the Journal of Adolescent Health, 1 in 9 youths receive unwanted requests for sexual material from peers or adults. Sexting and sextortion, you heard me say it earlier. Sexting is one way that some teens share inappropriate information. It's sharing of nude or suggestive pictures and videos through text messages. Research suggests that 15% of teens are sexting. You may even know people who have been asked to do it. Teens who get involved with sexting are usually joking around with friends, in a relationship where a girlfriend or boyfriend asks for a photo, flirting, or trying to impress a crush. Remember that if 15% of teens are sending sext messages, that means that 85% are not. Getting a request to sext might make you feel flattered because it means that someone thinks you're attractive. It may make you angry because someone is asking you for something so private, or it may make you feel pressured, especially if it comes from a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a crush.
You probably get lots of messages every day, but what if you got one like this? What would you do? Would you send a picture? No? Cool. That's an easy way to protect yourself. But what if you'd chosen differently? What if you send the picture? They'd never share it with anyone else, right? Do you want the picture shared with others? Sorry, you no longer have a choice. It's out of your hands now, because sometimes people we trust break that trust. Maybe the person you sent the picture to shows it to some friends. Maybe they send it to a couple friends, who send it to a couple more friends, you get the idea. It spreads, and you never know who might see it. Your little brother? Your mom? Other people at school? Even strangers could get a hold of your picture. You never really know where that picture will end up. How long it will be out there? Or what the consequences will be. Don't let others decide what happens to your image. Think before you share. Learn more at netsmarts.org. And hey, if your image is already out there, know that it's not your fault. For information about removing sexual pictures and videos from the internet, visit missingkids.org/gethelpnow.
The girl in the video thinks that only the person she sent the picture to will see the image, but she soon learns that once you share an image, it's out there and out of your control. So one study estimated that 88% of self-made sexual or suggestive images that teens post online are reposted to adult websites. If you take a revealing image of yourself, it could be lost if you misplace it or lose your cell phone. It may be passed around without your permission. For example, an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend may share the sext to get revenge. People may bully or judge you because of the image. Some teens have been bullied so badly because of sexting images that they've been afraid to go to school. The person that receives the image might try to use it to blackmail you into sending more images. You may get in trouble with your school or with law enforcement, especially if there is evidence of blackmail, bullying, or forwarding without permission. Some teens have been suspended from school, from class, from sports teams, and other activities. Others have been charged with a crime and had to complete community service or educational programs. For example, a 15-year-old Iowa teen was arrested and referred to juvenile court on suspicion of sextortion after uploading nude photos girls had sent him in an effort to get them to send more. A 15-year-old Texas boy sent to an alternative school for a month for sharing another student a nude image he received while on school grounds. And a 16-year-old Georgia teen was suspended for 6 days after tweeting a revealing photo that a classmate posted to his Facebook page. The school suspended him on a bullying violation. Once sexting picture or video is out of your hands, it's out of control. Fortunately, you can choose to stay in control before it gets to that point. Don't take images of yourself that you wouldn't want everyone to see. Don't forward anyone else's picture or video. Imagine how betrayed you feel if this happened to you. Don't ask or pressure anyone to share an image. Many teens send sexts because they've been asked to by a boyfriend, girlfriend, or a crush. But you shouldn't ask anyone to take this kind of risk, especially if it's someone you care about. Talk to a trusted adult. If you receive a revealing image, are being pressured into sending one or have sent one? While talking to an adult may seem difficult or embarrassing, it is important that you get one involved. An adult can help you by talking to your school to stop any bullying that has happened because of the image being shared. They can work with the law enforcement to investigate the situation, and they can help getting the image removed from any website that it's on. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children also has resources to help you remove your explicit images if they are out there online. You can go to missingkids.org/get help now for more information. Now let's move from what you're doing online to who you're talking to. It's important to understand that some people don't have your best interests and best intentions and may make inappropriate requests. If the request is unwanted or made by an adult, then it's called a sexual solicitation. Here's some examples of solicitation. You're in a video chat with someone you just met online, and he asks you to pull up your shirt. A friend keeps asking you for revealing pictures, even though you keep saying no. Or you're talking to someone on a social media site who asks you sexual questions and wants to meet up. These are examples of solicitations. If another teen or an adult asks you to do something like this, you don't have to do it. Some teens are bothered by these requests, others aren't, but you all have the right to say no. So how do you respond? Well, you can block or unfriend them, report the behavior, report any inappropriate behavior to the website or the app you're using. Talk to someone, a friend, an older sibling, or an adult you trust. When you make a report to the cyber tip line, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children makes that report available to law enforcement all over the country to figure out how to take action if necessary to stop someone from hurting children and teenagers. Next, I'm going to turn this over to Andrea, who is our assistant team leader, and she's going to talk to you a lot more about this.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you very much. I'm going to be sharing now my presentation, the part. Okay. All right, wonderful. And I think it's important to echo, right, what Janet just mentioned just a couple of minutes ago. It's important to understand, and for parents to also teach their children, and for teens to understand that some people don't have the best intentions, right? And may make inappropriate requests. And this happens online over and over again. As we are displaying on the screen, Operation Underground Railroad supported a very key operation with the Mesa Police Department. The operation was called No Mulligans. In February 2019, it led to the arrest of 17 men who sought out sex acts with someone they thought was a 14-year-old boy. Of course, there was an undercover police officer or special agents behind us doing the investigation. And upon further investigation, they found that in this perpetrator's Snapchat account, there were thousands of sexual explicit messages. Furthermore, the perpetrator disclosed that they had in-person sexual contacts with boys between the young age of 13 and 17 at his home, and they used to groom them by smoking marijuana with them. So parents and kids out there who are listening to this presentation, it is important to recognize that perpetrators are out there and they're everywhere on the internet. So as a parent, as a guardian, how can you help? Remember, the most important thing here is to communicate with your children. Talk to them about who they're talking to online. What are they doing online? Whether they are tweens or teens or even younger, the conversation must be had. What you are the first line of defense when it comes to online safety, when it comes to human trafficking. Next, we'll show a short video that illustrates this point even further.
Just by working with our company, it's a 20% increase within the next 5 years. In the next 5 years. It's a win-win situation for everyone.
To the untrained eye, it's almost never obvious, but it is happening around you. And every child is vulnerable, even yours. Even me. Make it okay for me to have a conversation with you. Really try to hear what I'm saying. Tell me that nothing I say will make you love me less. Don't assume I already know that. And realize it might take some time for me to believe it. Learn about my relationships. Who am I hanging out with? Who am I talking to online? Who do I have a crush on? I want you to care. And help me tell the difference between what's fun and what's sketchy. And if I don't answer, don't take it personally, but don't give up either. And in the meantime, help me connect with other safe people. If I don't know you care, if you don't show you're interested, someone else might.
So there is so much truth in that video, and I think we can all attest to that. And as the young girl states at the opening of the video, every child is vulnerable. Every child is at a potential risk. My children, or your children, or even grandchildren, or that children of your neighbors down the street. We learned today, earlier in the presentation, that traffickers are masters of manipulation and control. They can spot a vulnerable child, a child in need of attention, or even with low self-esteem, probably better than parents themselves can in most cases. And the reality is that kids are online now more than ever before. It's due to online learning, or the need to connect with their friends, because kids are social. We are social in nature. And unfortunately, in the last year, we haven't been freely to connect with others as we normally would in the past. They want to keep up with their friends and their favorite artists and music. They post videos and stories and selfies on Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok, and the list of apps go on and on. So it's especially crucial for parents and caregivers to prepare kids to be safe online. So how do we make their online environment safe? Well, first and foremost, communication and trust are absolutely key. We can implement many security measures. On their devices, we can install monitoring software, but if the lines of communication with our children are not open, I would dare to say that most of those measures would probably not prove very successful. No monitoring device out there will guarantee their safety. And a lot of parents don't want to talk to their kids about what it looks like to have an inappropriate relationship with an adult or answer sexual questions. And that is understandable. But if we don't have those conversations with our kids, those guys and girls, perpetrators out there, are more than willing to give them those answers. So we must talk to our children. Devoting time and attention and having active conversations with them are great tools to protect them. Have an open dialogue. Ask them, who are they talking to online? Is it someone from school? Is it a stranger they met online? What apps are they into? Who are they talking to when they're playing games? Ask, have they been asked to take inappropriate pictures of themselves? Or even pose the question, if they are asked, what would they do? These are all great opportunities to have an open dialogue with their children, whether they're teens or tweens or even younger than that, and teach them what they should do in cases like this. Because parents, we won't always be there to protect them, but we must equip them for them to protect themselves. And it's also very important to share with our children over and over again that we will be there for them unconditionally, even if they made mistakes, even if they sent inappropriate pictures. We must let them know that we love them and we will protect them above all costs. We must remove that element of fear and make it safe and comfortable for them to come and open up to us. And yes, if you're struggling because your kid will not talk to you about this topic, see if there's maybe someone else that they're willing to talk to. Maybe a coach, maybe a family member, maybe a family friend, or even a teacher. And although it's hard for parents to accept this, it is better for our children to talk to others rather than not talk to anyone at all. So the question is, when should I start talking to my children? And a lot of people will say in elementary school, kids are too young and don't need to have that conversation. Well, I'm here to tell you that yes, they do. As soon as they start using smart devices, whether they're phones or tablets or iPads, whatever the smart device may be, they need to have that conversation. The reality is that often at 3 years old, kids are picking up devices these days. And at 3 years old, we can still have age appropriate conversations. For example, not trusting people that they meet online. And as they get older, caution them about not posting personal information. So by the time that they're teens and tweens, we can talk about the harder conversations of cyberbullying and sexting, which we just spoke about, internet predators, and posting inappropriate information. According to an article by NPR from October 2019, so this was pre-pandemic, over half of children in the United States, that's about 53% or so, now own a smartphone by the age of 11. Let that sink in. By the age of 11, 53% of children own smartphones these days. And 84% of teenagers now have their own phones. But probably what's even more shocking to me is that 1 in 5 children has a phone by the age of 8. This really blows my mind. But I totally see it. There's a lot of peer pressure involved, right? Kids are being targeted mercilessly by the media, just like adults are. And probably their peers have a cell phone, or maybe they're influenced by media influencers or YouTube shows that they follow, or TikTok. There's so much out there thrown at them. And to be honest, my daughter started asking Santa Claus for an iPhone 2 Christmases ago when she was 6 years old. I mean, I literally fell off my chair when she started to talk about it. She knew what iPhone she wanted, what apps she wanted, what games to install. I mean, I was literally shocked how much this little human knew about iPhones. Of course, Santa Claus did not bring her an iPhone that year, and neither did this past year when the iPhone made it to the Christmas list again. But rather than ignoring her request for an iPhone, we sat down and we had an open dialogue with her. And she shared that she wanted an iPhone because her little friend in the first grade, yes, the first grade, had a phone. She brought it to school, and at times they would watch TikTok videos. So she wanted TikTok, of course, and Snapchat and all the other list of apps. And it took several conversations with her to explain that in our household, children don't get us an iPhone or any, for that matter, any type of phone at a young age. And this also goes to show you that children don't necessarily get exposed to online inappropriate material on their personal phones. It clearly shows that they can be exposed and exploited from other people's devices as well. That's why having communication and trust with are key, really. Also, teaching them the dangers of sharing personal details online, such as their name or their home address, or share pictures of themselves with strangers, no matter how nice that person may be. And how do we prepare our children for a safe online experience? Show them how to set up privacy features. And if they're on the younger side, set them up for them. And I know it could be very overwhelming because if you're not a technology savvy, but reality is that we live in the information age and information is at our fingertips. We can easily Google consumer reports, for example, how to use Instagram privacy settings or Facebook privacy settings. There's extensive information out there, and they're very easy to follow and is well explained. For your older children, encourage them to make their accounts private so they can limit who can see the posts they share. Take away Instagram location privileges so people don't know where they're posting from. This is key. And if your child uses Instagram, the social platform probably knows a lot about them. And of course, they pass this information to their parent company, who is Facebook. They use this information for targeted advertising and other business purposes. But limit ads. They can all limit ads that they can also, limit topics. There's no real way to opt out of targeted advertising, but there are ways to limit what ads you see less of. For example, alcohol or electronics, political, music, whatever the topic may be. Remember, our personal information leaves digital trails everywhere we go online. And this helps internet spies monitor us and create virtual profile of each of us. Also, it's very important to know the ins and outs of apps. Know them yourself before you hand them to your children. This can be challenging, especially, again, if you're not technology savvy. But you don't need to be an expert. Information, as I said, is at our fingertips. You can Google it, and I'm sure somewhere in the world has made a YouTube video that can easily step-by-step explain how to set up privacy settings, for example. And give your children examples and scenarios in which maybe someone they don't know contacts them on social media, and how would they react? For example, if your child is using the infamous Instagram and they get a private message and a friend request from someone they do not know, you see, that message will have the person's picture attached to it, but it would be blurred because they're not friends. That minute that your child accepts the message and the friend request, of course, they'll be able to see all the information on the other person. But the most important thing is that that person now will have the list of all your child's friends and as well as all the activity that your child posts, including personal information. So ask these questions, have those conversations with them, and teach them what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. I love this slide because it just shows you all the apps that are pretty much common for grooming, right? And this is a small subset in the application universe. But if your children are using any of these apps, it's time to get smart about them. As parents and caregivers, we need to look at our children's apps, download them, and understand how they work. We need to understand that if our children comes to us and says that they want Instagram or Snapchat, we need to make sure that we know how they work. If we don't, we're not going to know the risks associated with them. And technological advances, in particular, the internet and mobile devices, have really facilitated the sex trafficking of children by really providing a convenient worldwide, because it is worldwide, marketplace online. So what does this mean? This means that children are being advertised, they're being scheduled, and they're being purchased for sexual encounters through social media. As shocking as that might sound, this is happening every day. Predators don't no longer need to be near. They can be miles away in another city, another country, or even across the ocean, and they can still subject a child to physical and sexual abuse. So, tips to keep our families safe. And parents, it all starts with you. You are your child's number one resource and the first line of defense. Talk to them about online safety, expectations, and family values regarding sex, relationships, and technology uses, and set rules that fit your own household. For example, some tips: schedule time limits. After a certain time, some parents schedule all devices go off. There are ways to limit how long an application can be used during the day or even during the week. We have personally set this the safety control at home with our little ones. Place your home computers in an open room, maybe a living room or a family room, so that you know what they're doing and who they're talking to, who they're chatting with. So that is all visible to you. There are ways to turn off chat functionalities on many apps and games. So research what's available for the apps that your children use. Many families have implemented the basket designated place where everyone in the family puts their devices at bedtime. And use monitoring software such as Bark or Covenant Eye, Net Nanny, and the list goes on. Again, this can be easily Googled and they'll get a list, but these I would say are the top 4 that we recommend. Purchase child safe equipment. For example, safe watches that don't connect to the internet, or even phones that don't allow apps. These are called GAB phones, and pretty much all they are is just LTE capable touch phones. They can make calls and texting capabilities and cameras, but they do not connect to the internet. They don't allow gamings or social media features. It's just really for making phone calls for kids, and that's all kids really need. Also, clean routers, change passwords, steps that is pretty common sense, and implement security settings on phones and apps and games consoles. That is also very important. So what do we teach our children? And ideally, as I mentioned before, the conversation should start early on. Teach what a predator is, how by being overly nice, they can trick them, and really what they're looking for, which in reality is they're looking for sexual content from a child or to abuse them in person. Teach them never to meet up with a stranger they've only met online, no matter how nice, caring, or understanding that person may have been. And absolutely don't share personal information such as photos and videos. And we know kids these days, they love to share this stuff, but this is something that we must limit for their own safety. Don't share names, the schools they attend, where they work, or even where their parents work. Never share passwords, as we often hear, birthdays or age or family details. And absolutely teach them that it's wrong if someone asks them to keep secrets, especially if they're sexual in nature. They need to come and tell you. And even though they may feel embarrassed, it's not their fault, even if they engaged with a predator. And if someone they don't know sends them a message, don't respond. Or sends them a friend request, don't accept it. And we must all be careful what we post, whether they are words or videos or pictures. Once you post something on the internet, it may never go away, even if it gets deleted. There's always a way to retrieve it. Teach about sextortion, which Janice spoke about earlier, and how one photo can lead to others trying to control them. And this can haunt them for a really, really painful and long time. Teach the younger ones what private parts are and that they are meant to be kept private by them and by others. We spoke about, or the video that Janet shared earlier about sexting was from NetSmartsKids.org, is an organization that really encourage parents to check out their website. It's for the younger children, but also for the not so young children. And it's a wonderful resource that includes ebooks, cartoons, printable activities. And basically, NetSmarts is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's online safety education program. It's a wonderful resource. It provides age-appropriate content to teach children to be safe online and really helping them to be more aware of the potential risks that are out there. And this page just shows well-recognized games. I believe anyone on this call could probably recognize a few of these, but these are dangerous games. And again, this is a very small subset of the gaming universe. But a good rule of thumb is if any game or application allows strangers to speak and chat with your children, this can potentially be very, very dangerous. Be sure to screen chats and contact abilities. Many games allow to change those settings. So for example, not allowing chatting with strangers, but not all games do. So before you hand games to your children, make sure that you understand the ins and outs of them. And as parents and guardians, think before you post, whether they're pictures or names or locations and personal information that you share with your friends on social media. The online world is very vast, and before you post pictures of your children, remember that once it's on the internet, images can be shared, they can be saved on other people's computers, and even if they're deleted, they can definitely be recovered. Some parents, instead of posting names, they just opt to share the first initial, or others just decide to post vacation and out-of-town photos when they're back home from their vacation. And it's not that you cannot post, absolutely you can, but it's about posting and being smart about it. So to recap up to this point, it's very important to know the signs so you can be aware of what possibly could be happening if your child or a child you know is experiencing these signs. For example, poor self-esteem, sudden mood changes, behavioral changes perhaps towards you, anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, changes in school attendance, or changes in effort, Know the signs, though, that if something is wrong, you sort of have an idea of what could possibly be going on. And as we wrap up the main part of this presentation, I want to leave you with an eye-opening article that I would encourage parents to read. I mean, I must caution you, it has sexual content and descriptions of child abuse sex abuse online that could be very disturbing for some readers. But this article depicts exactly what we have been trying to bring to light in this evening, but this has real life examples. And if you're interested, you can Google medium.com mom who goes undercover. And the first search up there will be this article. And basically, it's about a 37-year-old mom who spends 7 days online as an 11-year-old girl. And she writes about what she experienced and what she learned. And like it's summarized here, in just 2.5 hours of her just posting an innocent picture, what appeared to be an 11-year-old girl on her Instagram account who happened to be public, she received 7 video calls from men. She ignored an additional 24, text chatted with 17 men, and received nude photos from 11 of them. She declined multiple requests to send nude photos of herself from above and below the waist. And over the course of the entire week for this experiment, she was contacted by 52 men. Just imagine your 11-year-old daughter, or it could be your 11-year-old son, maybe 10 or 13, being contacted by 52 men in a week. That is quite disturbing. And as Ryan states in the article, the brutal reality is that predators don't have to be in the same room or building or even the country to abuse a child. And 1 in 9 youths, as we explained earlier, receive unwanted requests for sexual material from peers or adults. These statistics are quite alarming. So if you know of a child that went through this or is going through something like this, how to respond. As parents and caregivers, we must believe them. Show them that you're on their side and will be there for them unconditionally. Save the evidence because you will definitely need it. Save screenshots and take pictures if at all possible. Definitely offer comfort. Be non-judgmental. The child will be very, very vulnerable, embarrassed. Often at times they will feel guilty. Show them that no matter what happened, they're not alone and it wasn't definitely their fault. Be aware of the child's age and development as well. Get medical attention if needed. And certainly report it. So where do we report? If it's an emergency and the child is in danger, without a doubt, 911, your local law enforcement. If you suspect of human trafficking, here's the human trafficking hotline. I encourage everyone to enter it into your phones. I actually did when I joined Operation Underground Railroad, and it's always there because it's hard these days to remember phone numbers, right? And if you to report child sex abuse material, which is referred to as CSAM, definitely report it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which we have mentioned in the presentation. They have a specific website and phone number to report this, and this is the cybertipline.org or 1-800-THE-LOST, which is easy to remember. And what are some ways that you can help? Well, there are many ways. And you're doing that right now by educating yourself, by taking these online trainings, and hopefully you'll be taking more, right? Educate yourself. Later on, we'll provide the website for Operation Underground Railroad, where you can take the Human Trafficking Training 101 course of knowing the signs. It's a little bit more detailed than what we have gone through this evening. Memorize the Human Trafficking Hotline or key it in your phone. You can donate to support this cause and join the fight against human trafficking. You can become a volunteer at ourrescue.org. You can host an event, maybe at your work, or to bring awareness. And Janet and I will be more than welcome to speak at your event if you so wish. Attend events like this to bring awareness. And also, your students or your child who may be listening to this presentation, they can start Students Against Trafficking. And Students Against Trafficking is a club that is started at schools by students, and they're meant to raise awareness about human trafficking and online exploitation by informing students and community members of the issue that is going on. And the Students Against Trafficking Club are sponsored by Operation Underground Railroad, and they're under their direction and oversight. So this is a great opportunity for students to get involved and join this fight and make a difference in their schools and communities. These are some of the resources that are part of our page. They're actually included on our freedomforallchildren.org. We'll provide the URL later on in the presentation, but these are great resources that if you're interested in the topic and continue educating yourself, to visit. Love 146, Polaris Project, just great website with great information and statistics. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Shared Hope, the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, and of course the Blue Campaign from the Department of Homeland Security. And this is how to become a volunteer. If you wish, going to ourrescue.org, sign up to become a volunteer through this website. You can take the Human Trafficking 101 training, Know the Signs. We personally in New York and Long Island, our team have the freedomforallchildren.org page. And if you have any questions at any time, this is our email right here. And to donate or join the fight in this cause to end this terrible issue that is going on in the world and as well as in the United States, here is the information to donate. And we'll open it up to questions if we have. I mean, I know we ran over 20 minutes, but if anyone has any questions, we definitely will open it up. And I really wanted to close with the Operation Underground Promise. And it goes like this. To the children who we pray for daily, we say, your long night is coming to an end. Hold on, we're on our way. And to those captors and perpetrators, even you monsters who dare offend God's precious children, we declare to you, be very afraid, we are coming for you. And at this time, if we have time, we would like to open it up for questions.
As a reminder, this was recorded and it will be on our YouTube channel, Freedom for All Children. So if you have any questions, you could put it in the chat box, or we do have a Q&A function, you could put it in there. Or another option is you can raise your hand. So on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see that option. It has like a little hand emoji. You can click that and we'll be able to allow you to talk if you want to talk and ask your question. All right, if there's no questions, we can wrap it up, and then this, sorry, the dog, again, will be on our YouTube channel.
Thanks, everyone, for signing up, for registering and attending. We really appreciate you wanting to be here with us tonight when there are so many other things you could be doing and talking about. It's a very tough subject, but we know that it's happening, and it's happening right here. And so we appreciate that you're here because you want to learn and understand what's going on and be part of the solution. And hopefully we've given you some tools, and Andrea does a great job with explaining how you can help and what you can do in this fight. So thanks again. And the YouTube channel is Freedom for All Children, and we should have that up within 24 to 48 hours. And it will be there so that you can watch it again and again.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Andrea.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Janet.